Well, it's been about 2 months since I have been gone, and so some of you are groaning, and some of you are happy to see me, and so hopefully there's at least a 50% on one side or the other. And with a sabbatical, you kind of go away, and you're supposed to reflect on what your life has become. You want to reflect on where you want to go, who you want to be. You reflect on your future, and you reflect on your past. And there's this pressure that is overwhelming to you that you need to find something deep and significant to say. So I have come back, and now I wanted to give you some of my reflections that since I've had 2 months to think about this needs to be very significant. This should be something that is transformational for you. This should be something that will make a difference in your life. The problem is I'm still me, and so we're going to go with what I have instead of something deep and significant. I have about 3 thoughts that I want to share with you this morning as I kind of thought about this moving forward in our congregation. I want to talk about learning to help. Learning to help. Now, all of you know the very famous story about the young boy who is going along the beach, and there's all these starfish that have been washed up, and he's going along and he's grabbing a starfish and he's throwing it into the ocean. And there's this older man that walks up to him, and he sees the young boy, and he says, "Young boy, what are you doing?" He says, "I'm throwing these starfish back into the ocean." The old man, kind of seasoned, looks at him and says, "You know, you can't save them all." The young boy reaches down, grabs the starfish, throws it in, and says, "I saved that one." And we always feel great about that story. That story about you may not be able to save all of them, but you can make a difference. That you can help one person in the multitude, the thousands of people around us. We can help somebody and make a difference. The problem is I spent 2 months or a month on Sanibel Island, and if you know anything about Sanibel Island, it is known for being a world-famous shelling beach. They have shells everywhere. The whole island is made up of shells. And so when you walk along the beach, there's washed up shells all over the place. Now, with that, they also have a lot of educational exhibits. We went to the National Shelling Museum. They have a whole building dedicated to various types of shells. And so, of course, we had to do all of the educational experiences at this museum. And so we went downstairs, and the lady was talking about these shells and how if you pick them up and it's alive, you're supposed to throw it back into the ocean. Because on Sanibel, if you take home a live shell, you're going to jail for 60 days with a $500 fine. They take their shelling seriously there. So you know if you find a live animal, a live shell, you're supposed to throw it in. Well, that's not really true. That's like if someone found you on the side of the road and they wanted to throw you back into your car. Yes, you may get home in your car, but you know what's going to happen? You're going to get a concussion. It's going to hurt if you throw them in. This shell is like our skull. If I took you and threw you and you hit your head, you would get a concussion, you would get injured. So this whole type of proverbial wisdom of grabbing the shell, throwing it back into the ocean, all you're doing is injuring the poor animal that's in the shell. So that kind of put this story in perspective about this young boy. We all felt so good about this. It was, oh, he's making a difference. He's making a difference, all right. He's giving concussions to starfish. This is not the brightest boy walking along the beach. He's not a hero. He's tormenting these poor fish. This made me think. When we are trying to help people, a lot of times we think we're helping, but we don't know how to help. In churches, we are notorious for this. As a body of Christ, we desire to help people around us. We want to serve them, but we don't always know how to do it. And so there are people who are hurting, and we come to the rescue of them, and we're like, I'm here to help, but what we're doing is not really advantageous for their own spiritual health. As members of the church, what we need to do is learn how to help. And one of the ways that we can do this is by checking with the person. If we're trying to give them advice, if we're trying to rescue them in some way, we need to ask them, what I'm telling you or what I'm doing, is this helpful? Is this making a difference? Is this something that is beneficial to you? Because it's too easy to insert ourselves into situations and to think that we're going to help. And church members have the expectation that the church will surround them and help. But a lot of times in churches and in congregations, we're actually walking on cross purposes. We're doing one thing, it's not helping, so the individual does not feel like they're being helped, but the church is saying, hey, look at all that we have done. Helping people is understanding what they need and what they can expect from us. If you look at Jesus, he is the good shepherd. In John chapter 10, verse 14 to 15, I am the good shepherd, I know my own, and my own know me. Just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. Jesus knows how to help us. And as we model this to the world, we need to learn how to help others. The next thing I was pondering while I was gone on my sabbatical is how to work this thing. It's this idea of finding significance. So I did something kind of different from the average preacher when he's on a sabbatical. You know, a lot of my preacher friends, when they think of sabbatical, they find all these deep, rich theological books. I did not do that. I read about Warren Buffett, Steve Jobs, I read about the Wright brothers, and I read one book about congregational leadership. And I wanted to discover what made these men significant. What did they do that brought significance to our world? Now, I'm not going to be a great tech producer. I'm definitely not going to be the third richest man in the world. But I wanted to see what were their strengths and weaknesses and apply it to my leadership and to my character. What could I learn from these men that are outside of a context that I live in that would help me be a better individual and a better leader in the church? And so I read these thick books, and I really enjoyed it. And I sat there and I read about them. And I learned that we all desire to make an impact. These guys made an impact, and I can guarantee you nobody will ever write my life story up and easily sell it. Now, they may write it up, and it will never be sold, and it will never be made into a book. Nobody will write my life story of 800 pages. I'm not that significant. But me and you, we may not do that, but we still want to make significance in our life. We still want to do something. It may not be something that we're on the bestseller list of the New York Times, but do you not want to make a difference in this world? So as Lance was saying that I'm middle-aged now, thank you, Lance. At least I'm bald like Nathaniel, who's younger than me. I'm at 39 years old. 39. Isn't 40 kind of the midway point in life? And I think about what I have done in ministry, and I'm glad about that. I'm glad I've been able to do what I've done. But I don't want to look back. I want to look forward. Because I feel like with all the years of ministry that I've been able to do, I only feel like I'm coming into my own now. I only feel like the next 20-some years will be better than the first 20-some years. And I realize that the most important thing is to create significance in my own life. When you look at your life, you want to create significance. I hope you do. And then I think about Castle Rock. Why are you here at Castle Rock? Why are you here at Castle Rock? What makes Castle Rock special when it comes to all the other congregations? You could go to 100 different congregations. You could drive to 100 different congregations easily if you're willing to drive for 45 minutes. So why do you come here? I look at Castle Rock and I see this. You could go to a mega church, 5,000 people, and I can guarantee you the preacher will do a lot better job. He'll have a staff and he will have this whole presentation so much better. So why do you come and listen to me? Well, a lot of times because you're forced to. But why are you part of Castle Rock? I believe because it's significance. Because we need you here. You could go to a church of 5,000 people and they will give you more programming. They will do a better job of maybe preaching. But I can guarantee you something. If you were here for 20 years, we will remember you. You will not be forgotten. That we need you here. Because when you look back in your life, you can say you made a difference here. You go to a very large mega church, which a lot of people are going to today, and that's their choice. You come in and you're one of 5,000 people who show up. Good. You show up here and say, I want to serve the Lord. You will make a difference. And I want you, when you come to Castle Rock, and if you're with us for a year and then you move, if you're here for 5 years, if you're here as long as Glenn Peters, that's a long time. You can look back and say, you know, we have made a difference in this church. I want everybody to feel that way. That you were remembered and you were important. You weren't just somebody who showed up to watch something. You showed up to make a difference. I'm excited about significance. But I want to talk about our future. You know, we always talk about that the church is one generation away from apostasy. And I think about that. And a lot of times when we think about that, we always think of the direction of unfaithfulness. They're just still in existence. They're just unfaithful. I don't know if that's the case. The more I think about this in the Bible, I don't know if it's a matter of just being unfaithful. I wonder, do they no longer exist? And so look at this line here. We do not inherit the church, and we all know that Jesus Christ is Lord of the church. But think about this. We do not inherit the church from our ancestors, but we borrow it from our children. I think a lot of times when we look at church, we come at from this perspective. What did my parents like? Or what kind of church did I grow up in? That's the type of church I want. Maybe we need to switch our thinking a little. What church will bless my kids? Because I don't want to be part of a congregation that dies. Because we have children in this room. And I want to be a church that says, are they, if they live here, if they're still part of this community, they will want to be part of our congregation. And so instead of having the sense of ownership, what do I want? I want to think visionary. I want to think, what can we be to make sure they find significance in God as well? This has to excite us. I remember this one elder one time, Mike. Mike comes to me and he's mad about something. I don't even know what he was mad about. I get people mad at me every now and then, and he was mad at me. So he comes into my office and he's upset. He says, Matthew, you're trying to change this church. I said, I am. He goes, what are you trying to change it to be? I said, I want it to be evangelistic. He goes, well, I'm for that. I said, Jesus is too. He goes, well, I just want to make sure you're not changing it too much. And I said, Mike, I'm not trying to do anything God would not have us to do. But I want this congregation to be a congregation that your granddaughter is proud to attend. He looked at me and I said, you know, Mike, if we don't do a good job, if we don't put our hearts into this, if we don't give time and attention to the congregation and what it will look like in the future, when your granddaughter grows up, and she's going to stay in Waynesboro because everybody stays in Waynesboro, I said, do you want her to be part of a congregation of 200 people or 50 people just barely getting by? I said, do you want to lead a church that is better for your granddaughter? Mike took his big hat, picked it up off the table, put it on his head, and he looked at me. He says, I'm going to lead a church that my granddaughter will be happy to attend. When I think of my role here, I want to help be part of a congregation. I want you to feel that way. It's not about me. It's about you. I want you to be part of our congregation and find significance here and lead it into the future. And then the final thing I want to talk about is this idea of finding significance, or finding He is faithful. So I sat on the beach a lot, and as you can tell, I got tanned. And I sat on this beach, and I read a lot, and I thought a lot. I just sat there and I thought. And I realized something. I've been with you all for 7.5 years. 7.5 years is really not long enough. It's really not long enough. Because God has eternity in His mind. And as I sat there and I realized all the blessings that I've received from this congregation, all the blessings that I've received from God, I realized that God's the MVP of my story. If you look at your story and all the things you have been through, all the ups and all the downs, the hard times, the good times, can you not say that God is the MVP? God is the real hero of our story. God is the hero of this congregation. I've been through enough ups and downs of this congregation. There was times when I looked at it and we were $1,000 away from paying the bills. I remember when I would look back and see 200 people, it was the finest Sunday on the face of the earth. We have grown. We have become financially stable. We have great leadership. We have great people. And when I look around, I have prayed for this congregation. And you know what? You are my answered prayers. You have come. You have been here. So I have a quick question. Who was here before I got here? Raise your hand if you were here before I got here. Now raise your hand if you came after the fact. We have a pretty 50-50 split. You want to talk about middle age? We're in middle age congregation. Some of you can't remember the good old days when I wasn't around. People, let's make a commitment. God is faithful, and God will be faithful to this congregation. Our future is brighter than our past. But we have had a great past. We have gone through various times in this congregation. We have gone through conflict. We have gone through times of abundance. We have gone through times where I wondered if the bills were even going to be paid. And God keeps on bringing the right people into this building. I look around and I see so many faces that have walked with me for so long, and I thank you. I look around at all these faces, and I see people who have come, who have got involved in ministry, who have made a difference in our congregation, and I thank you, because I realize God is faithful to all of us. Look what it says in 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 11 to 13. The saying is trustworthy, for if we have died with him, we will also live with him. If we endured, we will also reign with him. If we deny him, he will also deny us. If we are faithless, he remains faithful, for he cannot deny himself. God has been faithful. And as I sat there on the beach, I realized that God has brought me to Castle Rock. God healed my daughter through Colorado. God has placed the right people in my life to bless me. And so a lot of times preachers like to take credit for all the good things. There's no credit to be shared because God has been faithful. You have an opportunity to come and respond to this message. God is faithful. What is more inspiring about that message? That God is the MVP of our story. And if you would like to come, if you will believe, confess, repent, be baptized in remission of your sins, you can come and start that life. And sometimes you may think that you don't know where God is. But if you look back in retrospect, you will realize that God, he's the MVP, and you will glorify him. Why don't you do so as we stand and sing the invitation song?